To understand why this is like a gambling casino, you have to understand what's at stake here. On a December evening, December 15th, 2000, around 7 o'clock, Phil Gramm, Republican Senator of Texas, then chair of the Senate Finance Committee, walked to the floor of the Senate and introduced a 262-page bill as a rider to the 11,000-page appropriation bill, which excluded from regulation the financial instruments that are probably most at the heart of the present meltdown. He not only excluded them from all federal regulation, but he excluded them from state regulation as well, which is important because these instruments could be viewed to be gambling instruments where you're betting on whether people will or will not pay off their loans. And he announced at the time that this measure would be a boon to the American economy and be a boon to Wall Street because they would be freed of any supervision in this regard. And that lack of supervision freed Wall Street to essentially shoot itself in both feet.
It really started getting heated in 2004, 2005. The mortgage rates kept dropping for prime mortgages, the ones that most people get. And that made the others much more valuable because they offered much more yield. When you have that much cash flow that's extra, you can siphon off a whole lot more fees. And that is, it's all about money. Subprime, in 2005 and 2006, the issuance was about $800 billion total. It's a river of cash. $800 billion it will buy a lot of houses and do a lot of things. And you can tap into that. Your fees on that might be 4%. Okay, 4% of $32 billion. This is a Lehman Brothers bond done in early 2006. If you look here, you can tell how many mortgages are delinquent 60 days, are delinquent more than 90 days, how much money they've already lost, and how much real estate they've already taken back. That's in foreclosure. That's real estate they've already taken back and not sold yet. As you can see, this is not going well. They've got 800 million, and they've got 31% that's more than 90 days delinquent.
Dr. Greenspan, you had an ideology. You had a belief that that free, competitive, and this is your statement, I do have an ideology. My judgment is that free, competitive markets are by far the unrivaled way to organize economies. We've tried regulation, none meaningfully worked. That was your quote. You had the authority to prevent irresponsible lending practices that led to the subprime mortgage crisis. You were advised to do so by many others, and now our whole economy is paying its price. Do you feel that your ideology push you to make decisions that you wish you had not made?
Well, remember that what an ideology is a conceptual framework with the way people deal with reality. Everyone has one. You have to exist, you need an ideology. The question is whether it is accurate or not. And what I'm saying to you is, yes, I found a flaw. I don't know how significant or permanent it is, but I've been very distressed by that fact. But if I may I just finish an answer to the question previously?
You found a flaw in the reality?
A flaw in the model that I perceived is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology, was not Right, it was not working.
Precisely. No, that's precisely the reason I was shocked, because I've been going for 40 years or more with very considerable evidence that it was working exceptionally well.
I want to thank you on behalf of the committee.
Alan Greenspan was the foremost proponent of these derivative products, credit derivatives, which are now at the heart of the meltdown, of them being not subject to regulation. And his theory was as follows, that he believed these instruments afforded banks the ability to move risk out to the economy. In other words, to exchange their risk of making mortgages and having to worry whether people would pay the mortgages, and creating financial products that would invite the rest of the financial world to participate in that risk. His theory was, well, this isn't making matters worse, it's making matters better, because banks, when they make all these mortgages, won't be subject to forfeitures. Unfortunately, what we have seen in our most recent history of this credit crisis is, yes, it spread the risk through the economy and made everybody subject to that risk, not just the banks. The banks got so cocky because they thought they were passing the risk off that the discipline of being worried about whether somebody could pay their mortgage disappeared. And they made as many mortgages as they could make. They weren't interested in whether the loans would be paid back. That was somebody else's problem, translated through these credit derivatives and other unregulated instruments. They just wanted to do the transactions, make as many of these mortgages as they could. Every time they signed somebody up for a mortgage, they brought huge amounts of money in, and that's the way they profited.
There seems to be enough evidence to suggest that minorities were put into these loans and deceived and misled into unsuitable loan products. Some of the deception that home buyers found themselves in is both when they got to closing, and they were being told right up until the loan closing that their payment was going to be, say, $1,000 a month, and then they get to the closing and they're sitting and they're looking at the documents, and all of a sudden it says your monthly payment is going to be $1,500 a month or $1,800 or whatever the much higher number is. The confusion is that they weren't being told that they were going to have to escrow for the real estate taxes or the hazard insurance on their home. Now, on the flip side of that, we also have people who were being told when they refinance their loans that we could get them a lower payment. What they weren't being told is that where they were currently paying the taxes and insurance, under the new loan they would not.
So the purchase price is $135, and then the interest rate is 11.125. So it was 108 and 27. And the large loan is 6.6%, and then on this one, if this is the smaller loan, the second one, this is the one that's 11.125. And as far as I know, it hasn't adjusted yet.
We got so lax in the way in which we conduct these closings that they were being conducted at people's homes by notaries. You could do a real estate closing by meeting this notary in the parking lot of a shopping center and do it on the hood of your car. There's nobody to ask questions of. There was the thickness of these documents is like a phone book in any given city, and there's no time for the borrower to even be able to digest what they're being asked to sign. And in very many cases, they're doing this late on their way home from work, so they don't have to take off from work. They have to pick up their children at daycare, and, otherwise there's late fee penalties and that. There's just not an opportunity for so many of the folks who would not be in a position to understand what they were signing to do so. And there are even folks who are intelligent and trained as lawyers and in the real estate profession who admit that they don't understand some of the jargon that's in these documents. How can you expect the average person to? It's a myth to say that, well, these documents were signed voluntarily by people who knew what they were signing. I don't buy that.
These loans are incredibly complex. In fact, we've looked at loan documents here, and counselors here will look at them and go, they can't figure them out. And they've been looking at loan documents for years in their lives. And there's a clause somewhere in it that they can't, it adjusts at it's based on a certain rate. tied to some interest rate or some treasury note of whatever that is very complex, adjustable rate mortgages that only adjust one way, upward.
And how much is the payment on the first?
Even when a housing counselor was part of the process, frequently families would get to the closing table and suddenly were faced with a loan product that they didn't know about when they signed the real estate contract.
So he's already not going to make it.
I don't think some of the clients understood the mortgage they were getting. I don't think they understood that their income wouldn't support the loan. They were being told lots of different things to entice them into the mortgage, and I don't know who should pay for that, but I certainly don't think the homeowner should be.